Hello and welcome everyone for today's free online lesson. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Melvin Fabius Marcus and I'm from Acad Systems. So for today, I will be teaching you about 2D constraints in Inventor. All right. Okay, so for today, I will explain the learning objective for today. I will explain the concept of constraints. I will show you the difference between drawing in AutoCAD and in Inventor. And lastly, I will explain the types of 2D constraints. So what is constraints? So mainly 2D constraints is the 2D constraints limits changes as well as it defines a shape within your sketch. So in the case where, let's say your line, you constrain it horizontally. So no matter what changes you make, the line will not be in an angled or vertical state. So it will stay horizontal. However, if you move it, you can move it vertically or horizontally. Now, for drawing in AutoCAD, let me just show you. So if you draw in AutoCAD, like you have here, let's say I draw a rectangle and I draw 2 circles on top. All right, so let's say you have this shape in your AutoCAD. However, when you try to move this, so let's say I'll move. So as you can see, your design intent. So your design intent is actually where your curve on top here would move, followed by this curve below as well. But as you can see in AutoCAD, it doesn't. And also, when creating a geometry or a shape, you have to define manually. So let's say every time you draw a line, you must specifically input the value. And when you use dimension, so when you dimension your shape or object, it will only show the value length of that specific line or object. You cannot change when you change the dimension. Let's say the dimension value in AutoCAD, it will not change to, the line will not change according to it. So, however, in Inventor, when you change the input value for dimension, it will automatically follow the value. All right, so that's mainly the difference. And last, third one will be the types of 2D constraint. So in Inventor, there are 2 types of 2D constraints. First will be the dimensional constraint, which is basically parametric dimensions in which you place the dimension, specify the value input, and your shape or geometry will follow the input. Second will be geometric constraints. Geometric constraints is a relationship between 2 geometries in a sketch. Let's say, for example, 2 lines in which you constrain both of them, whether to be horizontally or parallel to each other. Okay, so I will show you in Inventor. Now, if in Inventor, so firstly, when you enter Inventor's 2D constraints, you will only see them when you're doing your sketch. So we can go ahead and start a sketch. Just click which plane that you want. So I will pick XY plane for it. All right. So as you can see on top here, here will be the constraint panel. Here you can see the dimensions and all the types of constraints available. All right, so I will show us a few shapes. Go. Let's go as well. Okay, so we have 3 different shapes here. So to start off, I will start with dimension. So for dimension constraint, you can just select on dimension, select our geometry. So once we select, it will show your input. So here we can just specify how much the dimension that we want. So let's say I will put here 10, enter. And as you can see, now I cannot change the size freely. Okay, let me just undo. Okay, before I did the dimension constraint, so this is, I can freely change the size of my circle, as you can see. But once I specify or make it into a dimension, enter, there it will lock in place. So it will stay with a diameter of 10. But I can still move it around freely. Okay. So if I want it to stay, so when it stays blue, it means it's not fully defined or fully constrained. So what we can also do in for dimension is when we select the point to the origin point here. So here now you can see, you can either dimension it vertically or horizontally. So I'll just click here and let that stay the value. And then I'll repeat the same horizontally. So horizontally, let's say I'll put about 9. So as you can see, it turns black. When it turns black, you know that it is fully constrained. So no matter what, you cannot change the size, the diameter, or I cannot move it around. So it is locked in place. It's already fully defined. Now, another thing for dimension, we can also specify click for, let's say we have a rectangle here, the lines. Just specify the length that we want. And then we can also have the same thing when we select the 2 top and bottom horizontal lines of the rectangle. So if I select the first one on top and the bottom, you will have the same value or same output. But there's a difference to it as well, where this one, when we dimension, it is the length of this specific line. Whereas when we dimension and select both top and bottom horizontal lines, it is the distance between those 2 lines. Okay. And we can also dimension an angle. So we can just select first line or second line, and we can make an angle. So you can just specify what angle that we want, enter, and we have this. So that is for dimensions. Next, I will show you for this automatic dimensions and constraint. So let me just delete here. I can show you. Okay, so for example, I create a rectangle here. Okay, now I made a rectangle here. I drew a rectangle floating around the space here and not starting at the origin point. When I select here, the auto dimension and constraint, this will pop up. So we have here our curve selection tool, in which we can select the curves or the geometry that we want. So I just select first. And then at the right hand side here, you can see dimensions and constraints tick. So what it means here is we can pick which that we want to auto dimension or either auto constraint or both. And at the bottom here, you can see it says that 4 dimensions are required for it to be fully defined. Okay, after I click all here, click apply, and as you can see, it will auto dimension the rectangle, but it is still blue. So it means it's not fully defined yet. Just now it says there are 4. However, there's only 2 here. And what it means, I can still move it upwards or sideways or to the side. So I can still move it vertically or horizontally around the space here. So let me just undo first. Okay, so when using auto dimension, so when we select the curves, what we can also do, we select the origin point here. So once we select the origin point and click apply, and you will see here, it will turn black. This way, we know that it is now fully defined or fully constrained. That's why it is now fully black. So next will be show constraints. Let's say I have a rectangle here. Okay. And I want to show constraint of my object. So just click here. Once you select, it will say select curve or point. So you can select all here, and it will show your constraints on that object. Same goes for here. So once you escape or exit the command, it will stay shown for what constraint is there. So in this case, you have this parallel here, horizontal constraint, and perpendicular. Same goes for here. Now, if you want to remove or hide the constraints, what you can do is just right-click. Down here, the menu, you can see hide all constraints or the shortcut key F9. So once you select that, it will remove or hide the constraints. Next will be constraint settings. Now for constraint settings, usually we have relax mode. Now what is relax mode? So as you can see here, for this rectangle, it is fully defined, so we cannot move it or move it around unless we change the value for the dimensions or distance from the origin point. So what you can do, when you select constraint settings under relax mode, click on enable relax mode, and you can see all these constraints that are checked. Those are what will be excluded when relax mode is enabled. So when I click OK here, even though this was fully defined and cannot move around, once relax mode is enabled, I can now move it as I please. So I can change, can move despite it being defined. Once I let go, now it will remove all the original constraints that it has before. So that is for that relax mode. Okay, I'll just disable it again. Okay, now I will go into the individual constraints. Just a quick tip, as you can see, there are 3 rows on top, 3 columns, sorry. So for the top 4, it usually involves points in which we select endpoints of our geometry. As for the middle, it will involve our geometry itself, which is, let's say, the line, a circle, and so on. And for the bottom one, it will be between 2 geometries. So maybe a circle and a line, 3 lines, and so on. Okay, so I will show you one by one. Just like this. Okay, so for the first one, this is coincident constraint. Now, coincident constraint is one where, let's say I have 2 circles. Now I want the smaller circle to be coincident with the bigger one, or vice versa. So what I can do when I select coincident, when I first select the midpoint, and then the second midpoint, and it will move here. So what happens now? These 2 circles share a same point, or in this case, a same midpoint, center point. So now when you move, it will stay within that point, because it is now constrained with each other. Same goes when you create a line. So let's say you have one line here, one horizontal line, and another line. Now, if I use coincident, I select the endpoint of the line to this horizontal line. Now, as you can see, it will move here. So now it will stay within that line. So the point will be within this line's axis. So no matter where I move, it will stay horizontal or between among this line. So if I can change the height, but the point will stay within this axis. That is for coincident. So the next one will be collinear constraint. Now for collinear constraint, so let's say I have 2 lines. One line here, and another one bottom. Okay, so for collinear means having it's almost the same as coincident, but usually used for straight lines. So I want this point for this line to be collinear with this. So when you select collinear constraint, select the first line and my second line. Now you can see the small symbol here. It means it's already in collinear constraint. So it means it will stay together no matter where I move it. So it means 2 objects or 2 lines will stay within one axis with each other. So no matter where I move or where I drag it away or apart, it will stay within the same line or same axis. So if I move upwards, both lines will move together. So if I move inwards or outwards, it will still stay. So that is for collinear. Next will be concentric. Concentric is almost the same also, in which if I create a circle and another circle, and I use concentric. So when I select the first circle and the second circle, it will also move to each other. So it's also the same with coincident. However, for concentric, it is specifically for curves such as circles or arc. So you can still adjust the size, but it will stay within one point. And you can move that point where both will follow each other. Okay. Next one will be lock. This one is pretty general. And so if you choose lock, so let's say this line, I lock. So once I lock it, I won't be able to move it around at all. So it will just stay fixed within that position in which I locked it. So let's say if I want to move this circle here, but I don't want this line to move, so I can just use fix and fix it here. So only the circle will move towards the line. All right. Okay, the next one will be parallel constraint. Okay, so for parallel constraint, so let's say I have one line here, and as well as another line. So you can see when I select parallel constraint and I select the first line, and then I select the second line will follow the first line and will be parallel within each other. So if you have a shape, okay, so I can change this into a rectangular sort of shape using parallel. So when I use parallel, I just click on this line to here. It will be parallel to each other. And the same goes for these two lines. It will be here. So it will be this shape. So we know when you select, you can see here the parallel image. It is constrained parallel with each other. Next will be perpendicular. Perpendicular also. So let's say you have a line, be it maybe a slope and another line. Now, if you use perpendicular, so it will move your line to be perpendicular to the second line. So if I select this, select the first one and the second one, it will stay perpendicular. And you can still move it around, move it freely. If it's not defined in a fixed position, you can still move it freely. However, it will be perpendicular no matter where you move it. The bottom or the first or second line, no matter where you move it, they will stay perpendicular with each other. We're just now using coincidence. It is also perpendicular, but the point stays within the second line's axis. So you cannot move it away. You can just extend or move it like that. But for perpendicular, you can move it freely. So be it the first line is on top or bottom, it will still be perpendicular to the second line. All right. Next, I will combine both for horizontal and vertical constraint. So I can also create a rectangle using just both of that. So I'll just make a random size length. Right. So for horizontal constraint converts a line, be it in an angled or slope position, to stay horizontal. So if I use horizontal constraint and select the line here, as you can see, it will now be or stay horizontal. You cannot change it to an angled or vertical because it's already constrained as horizontal. So the same, I will do it for the top here. And it will change like that. So let me just undo. Okay. So for vertical also the same concept as horizontal, where it changes a sloped line and move it to constrain it vertically. So if I select this slope, it will stay vertical. Okay, so when you try to make a horizontal constraint here, it will say it has another constraint already because it automatically, after I made this as a vertical constraint, it automatically detects that it is now perpendicular with each other, as you can see on top here. So now we can have a rectangle. So we can just define how much that we want. Okay. So moving on here will be tangent. So let's say I have one line and I will lock it in place and draw one circle here. Okay, the reason why I lock this line in place is so that the circle will move towards the line instead of maybe the line going to the circle, because it is not fully defined. So I'll just lock it in place. So when you select circle, I mean the tangent, select the first curve, second one doesn't matter since this is locked. So now it will stay in tangent with each other. Save. Okay. So this, if it's unlocked, you can just move it freely as well, but it will stay tangent. Next will be smooth. So if I use smooth, oh. Let's say I have one line here and then one arc. Sorry. Create another one, spline. Okay, just delete this. Okay, for smooth, smooth is where when you select your first and second, it will create a continuous line to make that smooth. So I will show again. So when I have two splines here, as you can see, first spline and second spline. So when I want to smoothen it out, smooth this here. So we can use the smooth constraint, select the first one and second, and it will combine each other. But the shape will change also depending on how your spline or your curves are. All right. So next will be symmetric. All right. So for symmetric, I will create one line here, there, and one more here. Right. So symmetric, you will need to select 3 objects or 3 lines in this case. So if I select the symmetry constraint, I select the first one, I'll select the second, and then the third will be the symmetry line. So when I select the symmetry line, which is this, the middle part, it will be symmetrical. So the second line or second object geometry that you select will be symmetrical to the first one. So it will stay symmetry within each other. So if you change or move it around, it will stay symmetric. Now, lastly, will be the equal. Equal is also general and pretty the same. So let's say I will draw a rectangle here. A circle. And then a circle. As you can see, these two circles are of different shape. So if I want them to be the same, what I can do is use the equal constraint When I select the first one and the second one, it will now be the same. So when I use dimension, and let's say I change this to 10 or 9, and I enter, both circles will change the size together. So it's a good way. So when you make complex or multiple same objects, it will, using equal, they will follow the length with each other. So if I trim here, as you can see, you will have here. So if I right, so let's say I move this shape in this kind of way, and I use equal, I can have this line equal the length of this line, and the same for this line, for this line, this line, and this line. Now it will all be equal length. So no matter what I change, they will stay equal to each other. So same goes if I do dimension. If I do the dimension here, if I put it at 15, both will be 15. And if I do here, dimension to here, 7, will also stay 7. So this one will also need 7. So the length here and here will be the same, here and here will be the same. Same goes for here. So that is basically for equal. Can also show if, let's say I have this line for 20. And I create another line. So when I use equal, as you can see, when I select the second line will follow the length of the first line. That is for equal. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the 2D constraints in Inventor. So that's the end for our lesson today. I'm really grateful for your time. Thank you so much. So quick before we end, so you can go to our website. So if you go to acadsystems.com, okay, so here not only are we are an Autodesk Gold partner, not only do we sell their products, we also are an authorized training center. So we provide training for customers that needs or wants one. And if you scroll down, you can see here our latest Autodesk promotions and news. And here will be where you can see our next free online lesson will be. So you can see here, next upcoming one will be Plan 3D Advanced. So you can just click on it and RSVP to join, which relates to what you want. Now at the bottom here, you can see we have our Facebook as well for Acad Systems and our YouTube channel. If you go to our YouTube channel, now for this, we will always upload our free online lesson in our YouTube. So you can also refer it back here later on in case you want to rewatch or see again the lesson. We also have basic AutoCAD in minutes and so on. So you can check out our YouTube channel. For updates, just make sure you are subscribed and the notification bell is on. All right, so I think I will end it here for today. Okay, thank you everyone for your time. So yeah, so also if you have any questions, if none, you don't worry, this video will also be uploaded, so you can also ask questions there as well and we will reply to you. So yeah, so okay, that's all for today's lesson. Thank you all.